studio live with Todd Grubbs.
Good to see you, Virgil. It's been a while. How you been?
I've been doing great, man. It's wonderful to see you, too.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad to be here.
We go back a couple years.
Absolutely, we do.
I've known you for what, 3-4 years now?
I think it's more like 30.
Okay, so it's 30 years. It's
but
30
3
years.
or 4 good years.
Right. Can we give everybody a super quick history of how we know each other? Go ahead.
I think you came and took some lessons from me at Thoroughbred Music years and years ago. I think that's how I first met you, right?
I did, and I had been playing guitar already for 15 years,
right.
And then I took lessons from you. And,
yeah, I think we did some theory, worked on some stuff.
Yeah.
I think you brought in the Clap by Steve Howe, and I said, I have no idea how to play that.
Right, and you know what? I'm still listening to that, still going, I still don't know how to play that. So that's totally happened for me. Well, it's so nice to have you here. We have quite a history through the years, so many things. I remember like when I first had met you, I'll tell you a story super quick.
Okay. Yeah, right.
I'm gonna have to edit this.
Virgil can talk about a piece of wood for 90 minutes, so we'll see.
So I met this guy, Bill Pike.
Oh, sure, love Bill Pike.
At Thoroughbred, and I'm at the counter and I'm buying something. I don't know what I was getting. And I see these CDs there. This is the time where I go throw the CD on here because what a great photo that was too. I didn't even catch it as I first looked at it with the
the combination. That was early in the day of the digital stuff, right?
Right, yeah, and really done well. I mean, back in the day before all that. I mean, back then it was all cut and paste. I was a paste artist. That's another story. So it was kind of cool, and I was like, "Who's this guy? Let me guess. He's some guy all about himself."
Right.
And Bill actually says, "No, Todd's a really cool dude. As a matter of fact, he teaches next door." And I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I went, he planted this seed, and I said, "Man, all my stuff sounds alike." And I ended up taking lessons with you. I remember at the first lesson, you had the CDs there too, and I was like, "Well, let me try one of these."
All about the CDs,
and I take it home, and I was like super impressed with this CD. It blew my mind. So I was like an instant fan. It's like, wow, what's gonna happen now? So and I did, and it's kind of neat because it ended up being full circle. I did what a lot of my students do today, where they just kind of show up. And if they just kind of hang around, maybe I'll get it by osmosis. I'll just talk to Todd, and it's like, well, what kind of beer do you drink? And what kind of cigarettes? Are you on those diet cigarettes and the Marlboro Lights and stuff? Sure. So, but you were on a total diet kick there. You were on Marlboro Lights and Diet Coke.
Well, Diet Coke was just my coffee at that point. Yeah.
But it was good, man. And then I remember we'd keep in touch a little bit through the years after that. But then you had called me up one day for you asked if I could help out with designing your next CD, which was super exciting because there was a 10-year span in between those two.
Yeah, I didn't really do another instrumental album or really anything. I tried to get a number of things going with some original projects, but you know how that goes, working with other people. I tend to do better when I work on my own project.
But something happened, and if I can,
sure.
Your Honor, I remember that it was like you had done all this stuff at Morris Sound on that first CD.
Right.
But now all of a sudden you started learning the art of home recording, and it
was just necessary because that first album, I just spent a lot of money recording that album. And it was great because it was like going to college, learning how to do it and studying with Jim Morris, who is, the amazing producer and engineer. So that was a great thing, but I just can't keep spending that kind of money on a project that doesn't make that kind of money back. I did get a little deal in Japan for that album, but it wasn't a huge amount of money. And so I had to keep doing original music and recording my own stuff. I had to learn how to do it. And at first it was a little tricky, but it definitely saved me a lot of money because I could stay in my own little studio and record for hours upon hours, and none of that worked. And then more and more, if you do that in a conventional studio, you're just gonna lose your
So
butt.
what did that add to your thrill being able to create your own stuff? So all of a sudden you take these restrictions and you just take them, and nothing against Jim Moore. I mean, all that stuff, just amazing stuff that I mean, Winger got a platinum album out of there. I think
back in the day. Well, if I was loaded or a rock star or something, I would love to just hire Jim or people like Jim and hire these studios and not have to worry about it. But to keep recording original music like I wanted to, I had to learn how to do it. And it was very fulfilling because, you just have to learn how to use the gear first and learn how. And one thing that really helped me a lot, I was always terrible at miking amps. I could mic them on the circles that they circled, and then it would sound like crap. And then I'd come back the next day and it sounded like a totally different type of crap, But these modeling amps, I started using this Line 6 Pro and some other modeling amps where the sounds were pretty darn good and pretty darn consistent.
Right.
And then that's when I could just be creative. Because I'm not an engineer.
Right.
I'm just not. But I'm enough of it to get to the point where I'm a creative person, and I just don't want to have to deal with the technical side a lot of the times.
Right. This last song that I did, Just Don't Care, I remember the first guitar that I recorded on there was just recording like my Vox amp over here. Mm-hmm. And I had one mic right on it, had one mic, a couple feet back.
Right.
And I just tried to balance out in between the two of those, trying to just get that perfect sound. It just didn't work out.
I know.
Then I did a direct line in, and then I tried using some company who makes all the software-based ones, mm-hmm. and it didn't sound too bad. Actually, it sounded a little bit better than really miking the amp.
Right.
And then I broke down. I was like, you know what? I got this Axe FX.
Right.
Why don't I just go ahead and use that? And I did that. I was like, man, this is just amazing. It's why Vi and all these guys have this unit here. They go out live with this now, too. Sure. And I remember you with the Line 6 of using that, man.
It was just easy. I had like 4 or 5 sounds. That's all I needed.
Right.
I'm not one of these guys who does crazy different sounds. And, and then
Do you change your pickups, though, sometimes or not? Or
sure. Depending on the part, you get the right guitar with the right sound. And then ultimately, when you go back and mix it, you can add some effects or delays or reverbs and affect it, but just getting a good clean sound, whether it's a gain sound or a clean sound, that just made it easy, because then it's just being creative after that and writing, which is what I want to do.
So you and I, we had a conversation quite a few years back. We were talking shop with recording, and we had discovered that night that we have a lot of similarities, but I don't think this is just unique in between you and I. I think a lot of people do this. We'll use the recording a lot of times as like a sketch pad.
Absolutely.
So, and a lot of times we will stumble onto that perfect guitar sound. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I don't know how well you are at notes, but I'll just write it down. I'll just type it in the DAW. I'll just say, hey man, it's this amp setting and number 134, and I use my neck pickup or whatever. So this way you could pull from that, because you would hear that compared to other things during your scratch track.
Sure, and I think that's something I always tell everybody, that I'm a better song fixer than I am a songwriter. So my whole theory of writing is to write a crappy song and then go back and fix it, I'll just sketch it out.
Todd's the crappiest guy I know, I swear. You're such crap, man.
But it's just like, I will leave spaces. Like, okay, here's 12 measures. I'm going to do something cool there. And then I'll have another 8 measures. And then I'll have one part. I really like that part. And then I said, well, what is that part? I could change keys and do a modulation and variation of that part here, and I can repeat this, but it's just building it. And if you have all that stuff sketched out, then you come back to it and you keep tweaking. Well, what if I shorten that? No, what if I lengthen that? So it's just a way to do it in a session without having to just write a book about a song. It's all there, and you just continually mold it until you get it pretty right,
That's awesome. So, and what happens with that too is I don't know, it seems like you have to have quite a few songs to do this. It's not like you're just working on one piece. I mean, or do you work on just one piece?
It just depends. I tend to have a lot of ideas and a lot of fragments. I even do this thing I kind of call like an idea dump, where I just, every day I'm like playing, oh, that's kind of neat. Then I'll record that. And then I'll record that, and then before I know it, I've got like 40 little snippets, and I'll just dump that into session. And then later on, I'll go through and pull ideas out and build stuff from it. So it's just a way to remember it. But I do tend to have a lot of different projects going at once, and I'll start something and get going on, then I'll start something else. But I'm definitely a finisher, so I always try to get back to things. And I think that's one thing that maybe other people have a problem with. They start stuff, and brilliant musicians I've known that have never finished anything.
Right.
Brilliant, you know? Mm-hmm. They'll play me something, and it's like, oh, that's amazing. Yeah, well, I never really got back to that. I'm like, really?
Right.
It's like, I'm so obsessive about it. I finish stuff that doesn't deserve to be finished. You know what I mean?
Right,
I
absolutely.
finish these little weird demos that just isn't going to be used for anything, but I just got to finish it. So I think that is one of my strengths.
That says something about your character, though. And, like, lots of caffeine.
Right, exactly. But I'm kind of a grinder. It's just like if I'm onto something that I think is good, I've just got to see it through. And it's usually pretty rewarding to do that. And then, get it done, name it, put it out, it lives, it's there. Whether it does anything or 18 people listen to it or a lot of people listen to it, it's there, it exists, and right. I like that.
And it's plus all, and then you have this collective set of experiences through these tracks, and then you discover things about yourself along the way too. It's such a rewarding thing that it ends up being trying to teach our students, because we're both guitar teachers as well. So teaching the students this is just it's such a thrill, because you start telling them and saying, well, you have two options here, Johnny, if you want to get really good. One is join a band, or two, start recording.
Sure.
Because you can record.
Right. It's a project. It's an application for what you're doing. Because that's one thing I have with some of my students. It's like, okay, well, why do you want to play music? Well, I don't know. And some people just want to play some songs, and that's fun. Right. But for me, to really excel, you have to have a project or a goal, and you start the idea, you work on it, you develop it, you finish it, and like I said, name it, and you have, whether it's a band or playing at a gig or doing the recording. So I think that's important. Yeah. Now,
you've also had a lot of experience with pulling in other artists, which I've had that experience too, and that brings a magic to it too as well.
Oh,
and you've worked with so many artists. I mean, you worked with some pretty big name artists out there.
Yeah,
Mike Keneally and stuff.
Sure, but once again, with the digital age, it's just for these people to do a little recording for you, it's not that expensive, because hey, I'll have a cup of coffee, record a solo for this guy, and if they listen to it, I'm sure they must have a level that they are going to deal with. I'm sure they're not just doing it for everybody, so that's kind of exciting that they would be willing to record all my stuff. But it's just digital, the DAW stations, and being able to send this through Dropbox to some guy in California, and when he gets an hour, hey, I'll do that. It's something that's actually feasible now, and it's been a lot of fun working with those people.
Right. So now I want to go back in history a little bit, and I had this little idea we were talking about before you came here tonight, and we were talking about this thing with your archives. You have, I mean, we're talking almost 40 years of you writing songs at this point, right?
Yeah, I think I started writing when I was about 14 or 15.
Right, yeah, me too. So it was like, I got a song in the dresser drawer over there. It's from 1979.
Yeah, I think interesting. I think that's about 79, 78, 79. I think that's
just crazy.
When I started writing.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
So with that, you had these, and I know your lucky number is 11. I know this. I know this because I'm your artist. I've been your artist for all these CDs for you for years. Although you had what's his name, Guy, the artist, the painter, who he's painted your guitars and stuff.
David Hervey.
Okay, David Hervey.
Right,
so
right.
And he did all the art for that one album.
Right, yeah, exactly. He's an amazing artist that I love, and I have some of his paintings, and he painted some of my guitars, so I kind of put the guitars on the cover. You put that all together and made it look like a gallery, which was amazing.
I remember.
Yeah.
And then I remember also, like, it was so you were 10 years after, so your first CD was called Combination.
Right.
Let's talk about that for a minute here.
Sure.
You were, this sold in Japan pretty well and was doing
I
pretty
got a
good
little
in
deal
Europe.
in Japan back in the day, and it came out there, and I got paid a nice little chunk of money, and I think it did pretty good, and that was kind of it, you know. And like we were saying before, you came in and bought one of my CDs. People used to do that. Man, I would sell $20 a pop. And what year was that? 94, 95, and $20 a pop. Man, I'd sell those things like hotcakes. I couldn't keep them in stock, but that's just the way it was back then. And so in a big way, or big way for me, it was pretty darn successful. But it wasn't getting you rich, and I decided to work on some original stuff with vocals, and I had a number of bands, and I was doing a lot of little shows and trying to find the right singer or work with the right band, and it just never really happened. We had a lot of fun, played a lot of gigs, but I started to realize that I was just kind of trying to do something that like the labels would want me to do so I could get a deal, and it really wasn't about being an artistic musician anymore. So then I just said, hey, I'm going to do another album exactly the way I want to do it.
And it brings up this whole other interesting thing, because back in the day, back in the day, I mean, we're talking, it was that the excess of the 70s, I think what had happened. And then so these record companies basically, and I had heard that it basically went something like this, out of the 10 acts, one was actually going to make it. So and what they were really doing, and they still try to do to this day, is basically just own everything that comes out of you. So we think about some of these musicians who just said, stick it to the man, and said, no, like yourself, good for you. But at the same time, you miss a lot of these opportunities. But then you say, well, maybe the journey ended up being right where I'm supposed to be.
Sure. That's one thing about, I've never really made big money doing music, but I've been able to make a living doing music through teaching and recording other people and recording my stuff and putting it out. And just recording my stuff, it's kind of like the ultimate business card for people that want to learn from me or take lessons. So it's been great, and it's been pretty pure. There's been only a few things that I've recorded that I'm like, hey, geez, that was kind of goofy, and I was really trying to, do something I thought that's what somebody else wanted to hear. For the most part, 99% of everything I've recorded has been just something that just tickled me or interests me, or something that I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So that's a pretty good place to be for a musician, because a lot of musicians kind of sell their soul for something, and even if they do have success, they end up not owning the rights to their music, and then, having to borrow too much money to do the next album, which takes all the money they thought they had made, and that disappears. So even big bands, I've seen some documentaries on big bands that you thought were super rock stars that really don't have anything, or at least they got, screwed a little bit with the financial end of it.
Right, and it's kind of funny how people perceive that on the outside,
Right.
And even though, I've been in bands, so many bands since I was 15. I've been in bands, and what's funny is you'll get people who they get really upset because Pink Floyd broke up, and then when you think about it, if you've been in a band yourself, you totally understand why they broke up, and you're okay. And so what? There's millions of dollars that has to do, and it probably even makes it worse. It's like
money.
It's like having a married couple who wins the lotto. Those marriages don't work out too well. Neither did Pink Floyd. Heed the warning, kids. But that ends up being really interesting, because what does that do to the music, and what happens? And here's this next question. I'll just throw out this random question with Todd tonight. I've got a couple gotcha ones. This is the first one. These bands that work so hard, and there's this pureness about the music that they're doing, but then all of a sudden, something happens, and they get this deal with the big companies. We're not going to mention Tom Schultz with Boston or anything, but you think about these bands where they just had this pure energy, and how do they keep that? And that's why you and I know we both have a mutual respect for the Beatles, because all the crap that those guys went through, and still Paul McCartney is still, he can still go on camera, and you just want to give him a big hug. He's like your uncle now. But what do you think about that towards the music? Does this affect the music? what
you mean
affects
getting
the
a
music?
deal and having success?
No, I'm talking anything, like something big in your life. Does that have anything to do with the music for you? Even so, you don't write a lot of lyrics. Is this true?
Well, actually, as of lately, I've been writing a lot of lyrics. Yeah.
And so you're writing that out of experience. Is that so? You're like somebody who's been pent up for a long time,
Right.
saying, "I want to write a song."
Well, I never really had a desire to write lyrics and write pop music. Not that what I'm doing is pop, but it's just I've gotten an opportunity as of late to do some writing, and I've kind of fallen into a method. And my method has basically been to come up with a subject and then research it and then just kind of take notes on it and find little phrases and just kind of piece things together. So I've kind of developed a method.
So you're
and
like
I'm really
an evil
enjoying it.
scientist
Exactly.
with the lyrics too?
Yeah.
We were talking about how a lot of times you'll take like a chord or series of chords from one song you like, but then you'll take a rhythm from another song and then take a key from another song and merge them, because there's only so many chord combos that you can come up with.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you were doing that to what the Beatles did a day in the life. It's just like, well, here's the newspaper. What can we pull out of here? So
it's true.
And I know that that's not what you do with everything, but
well, it's just finding a spark, finding some starting point. It's usually some little idea, and like I'll hear a song by an artist, I'm like, oh, now that's a cool feel. That's a cool idea. Then I'll kind of maybe start to write my version of that. And usually it ends up sounding completely different. It doesn't sound like the original, but you get inspired by things, Or you might take a chord progression that you hear, that's just a cool chord progression. What if I did that in a minor key? Or I changed a chord, and then you develop a new melody with a new rhythm. So, it's just anything and everything. And I think if you are always looking for different ways of coming up with ideas, I think that's good, because if you get too much of a formula, you're doing it the same, then it really is going to get, too close. Everything will sound the same.
I know most of the time you use real drummers for your music, most of the time that I've heard through the years. Do you use like drum loops or drum machines?
I have in the past, sure.
Just as you're penning a song, or do you just?
Although the number of drummers that I've worked with, like Ed Aborn, who's a drummer I'm working with now, he likes it when I just record ideas to a scratch track, because then the ideas are there and the inherent rhythms are there to a certain extent, but then he can put his own creative input into it. Then I get something else, because he'll send something back that he's recorded a drum track to, and I'll be like, wow, okay. Well, that's different. That's not what I was hearing, but that's actually pretty cool. So then I'll maybe tweak the part a little bit. So it's a collaboration sometimes. I just enjoy working with a real drummer. And, there are programs you can really learn and you can get really good at it. But, man, I don't want to do it. I don't want to sit down and have to learn the program. But I'm not a drummer anyway, so even if I could get good at it, I don't know if my ideas would be that great. But it's just nice to have a collaborator, and I enjoy that a lot more. Although there have been little snippets or little parts of some of my songs where I'll use just a loop just to get that sound, some little repetitive drum loop. So I'm definitely into that as well sometimes, but it's just whatever works and whatever given the situation.
That's very cool. So, and then what about the bass? I mean, you're doing bass sometimes?
Oh, sometimes, yeah. And I have a number of bass players. I used to work with Alan Tatum, and he recorded a lot of stuff for me, and he's a great bass player. And I worked with Sean Malone, who was fantastic. We sadly just lost him, I think about 6 months ago.
I did not know this. Wow.
Yeah, it's a shame. But he was brilliant, and sometimes I'll do the bass myself, but I like to have, again, another collaborator, just the better player on bass, and it'll bring a different feel to it. So it depends on the song, too. Sometimes it's not necessary for the bass to be anything elaborate.
We're going to go head-to-head with my favorite Todd Grubbs songs.
Okay.
But I want to start at the beginning, where this is it's not one of my favorites of yours, but I still really like it a whole lot. It has to be on my top 10, and I believe it's the intro song of your debut CD, which is Size 5 Lightning Boots.
Sure.
bit about this song.
The first riff, well, it's just kind of a cool, kind of off, but rock riff. And I'm trying to remember coming up with it, but it's just once again, like one of those little parts, like, oh, okay, I like that part. And I just came up with that. And then I had to kind of decide, okay, where's it going to go from there? So it's just a tight little rock heavy riff to start the song. And then after that, it goes into more of a melodic thing, but yeah, that's about all I remember on that one.
It's pretty driving though, too, man. Yeah. I mean, it's just it kind of grabs. It's almost
and it's
like
kind of got a couple stops and starts, and you got the drums playing tight with it. So it's just kind of a little semi-progressive part, right?
And it's kind of like you have this like really fast car and you just pull up to your friend's house and there's some people standing outside out front and you're going, hey man, check it out. And like you're doing this stuff and then all of a sudden they go, okay, get in the car. And they get in the car and then all of a sudden then it's gone, man.
Yeah, well, that's cool. That's
what this song does. Yeah. So I love the song. This is available at toddgrubbs.com, right? They could actually get you
it's available streaming and it's available on iTunes
all
if they
over
still
place.
Do that. I mean, wherever you can buy it or listen to it. Excellent. I don't even know anymore.
Excellent. Yeah.
To be honest with you.
We'll give them a...
Come over to my house and I'll sell you a copy.
Come here, kid. I got a deal for you. So let's go to, can you think of a song that speaks to you right now that you'd like to talk about?
Well, off of the first album, I would have to say Travels with Charlie. Ideas that came together the best, and it had a lot of changes, and it had some very pretty parts, it had some heavy parts, it had some shred parts, it had some melodic parts, and also, speaking of Sean Malone, he was just brilliant on that. He's driving that song with his fretless factor bass, and it just really brought it to life. That one is definitely one of my favorites. It's one that I enjoy listening to. Like, I can listen to that and go, oh, cool, I enjoyed that. And where some of my stuff, I'm like, it's like
not this one again.
Not that one, yeah, exactly.
But that's cool.
But not much. It's interesting. There's not much, like I think we talked earlier, that I just have a big problem with, because I think most of it was done from a pretty pure place. I wasn't trying to just. Sometimes guitar players try to do things just to impress and say, hey, check this out, I can do this, and it doesn't necessarily make a great song. And I don't think I did too much of that. Maybe a little bit.
Right. Let's go to this next CD. We'll you can tell me your favorite, and then I'll tell you my favorite. How's that? I've
got to remember these songs.
So I'm going to run through these, and it's Satification.
Yeah.
And this is off of the Beautiful Device album. This is where you and I kind of started hooking back up, hanging out with each other. You had me come over and I did a photo shoot in your garage that night.
Right.
People would have to buy the CD to see it. Maybe I'll show them a little bit of artwork.
That's kind of quirky but pretty cool. Yeah,
it was neat stuff, man. The double Mook neutralizer,
you
whatever.
Came up with a lot of those titles. Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So we got Satification. We have Time Phaser. Inky Goes to Tampa. Mala Vode. I Am Freebus. Uncle Bobbert, the Cowboys of Alpha Centauri, Get Out of My Yard, My Sweet Laura, Beautiful Device, and The Luckiest Monkeys in the World.
Right.
So if you could only play one on a stage right now, you're going to open up, let's say, for Vi or somebody.
Right.
And he loves this CD. He likes all the songs, but he wants you to pick out the song that you're going to play, and you got the total band with you, and they can rock out the whole thing. Which one?
Well, the one that I would probably pick for live is Time Phaser, but it really evolved. That song is just kind of a tight, short, little funky tune, and on the album, and I like it. But that song really evolved as we played live, and we did that live, and we turned that into more of like a 7-minute tune. And that was a great live song. Kind of got that Phrygian dominant type of beginning riff. groove to it. It's a rock song, and I think most of that album, it does have kind of a jazz fusion flavor.
Sure.
But it's really just a rock album. You know, I'm definitely a rock player, but I love jazz, and I love improvisation, and I love the sound of jazz. So
what happened to you in between combination and this? With those years, the span and everything, were any of these like ideas that were earlier on from like right after combination?
Well,
so was it a culmination of the 10 years, or was it closer to the year or two prior?
Well, interestingly enough, I came back after combination and recorded 4 new tunes at Morristown, but I did not finish them. And I think those, and all I had was bass, drum, and scratch rhythm tracks. I ended up coming back to those for the Time, Space, and the Electric album and finished those then. So there's actually 4 songs that are kind of combination era songs that I finished for Time, Space, and the Electric, but I never really finished that or put it out, and kind of got into trying to do a band thing, and I had a number of different bands and trying to get singers and playing. We did a lot of local playing around the area, and just never really got anything that great off the ground. And then, you know, like we talked about before, it was like, well, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to get a big deal and be a rock star, so I'm just going to start writing music again. And it was easy to do. And once again, with the digital technology, it allowed me to do this without having to spend, you know, 15 grand in a studio to do it. So that's kind of, it was a technical aspect of being able to do it again, plus failure. And then saying, hey, if I'm not going to be successful, I might as well do it on my terms and do exactly what I want to do. And it's what I did.
Wow, talk about really just taking that to the next level. So here you've got 2 different people, though. You've got the one that's under pressure saying, man, I'm paying X amount of dollars per hour to do this at Morristown, and man, I got to get my shit together. Yeah. I got to make sure I got this stuff practiced out. Right. I got to be spot on when I go in there. So your rehearsals just alone had to have been mind-boggling. And what does that do to you as a player, too, where you're just saying, hey, man, because you know, your game is always improving as a guitarist, no matter how long you've been playing.
Well, it's a different set of muscles. When you rehearse for 6 weeks and write something and get it exactly the way you want it, that's a cool thing, but it's, in a way, it can be not that creative. Because there's a lot of things that I'm able to do now with having my own recording studio, is I can just sit there, like, on, I'm trying to think which one it was. I think it was the Cowboys of Alpha Centauri. I just messed around, and I had some bad notes. And then I listened back to it. And I liked a couple of the bad notes, and then I doubled the bad notes, and then I really liked them. So
it's double the pleasure, double the bad.
And then there were some bad spots that I cut out, and I replaced them with good stuff. So I got this long solo that it's one of my favorites that. It has some really off stuff, but I liked it. And like I said, when I doubled it, it made it sound more purposeful. You know, 2 guitars playing the same thing. He must have meant to have done that, right?
Right.
And then I fixed, and that's the one thing, the creative way of using Pro Tools or the different type of recording stuff now is you can be really creative with it and just fix little problems and keep an improvised solo or part. Or you can go through and fix every little thing and do it note by note, and then it's really just, you know, too stilted that way. So it's just how it's used.
So I have a question here, because I think I'm realizing something here, which is there's the 2 songs that speak to me the most on this CD was Malavode and the Cowboys of Alpha Centauri.
Cool.
Now, I want to talk about Malavode for a second here. Because it's Kate Bush at the beginning. Was it a record?
Is that what I did? Was it a conversation? Yeah.
So, and it was interesting. You hear dishes moving and stuff.
Right. That was just.
But here's my question for you. Wasn't this, I mean, to Todd Grubbs' history, wasn't this like the slowest beat per minute song that you've done? And I found that really interesting. Now that I'm looking back, I'm going, maybe that's why that spoke to me. Right. Because it started, we're going to play that for everybody, just because we're talking about it, so they could. it's just got a nice little groove. You're just hanging out and everything. But then all of a sudden, it's like, you do this to people all the time. You get them by surprise. It's like, hey, we're going to have some oatmeal here. And then all of a sudden, it's like, no, we're not. We're going to have a steak. So, and that's really what happened. Because when it starts coming in, and it just starts, it is.
You got to have dynamics or it's not interesting, in my opinion.
I've been using other words with the students besides dynamics, also like color. So we're adding color.
Sure.
We could do that. We could use the word contrast.
Sure.
Because it's going. I think it goes beyond just the dynamics of just like
dynamics
how music. Music tells us. Just like being like it's gonna be quiet or it's gonna be really loud. And I think there's a lot of other things that are going on here.
Well, dynamics is very broad. It could be blue, or it could be green, or it could be warm. It could be soft. It could be furry.
But we're talking also about layering, and I do this quite a bit with music, and I want to hear your take on this. You don't wake up one day and say, oh, well, I'm going to have this thing going. I'm going to have this keyboard going. I'm going to have this going, and then. It doesn't really work out that way.
Well, it's just for me, it's just trial and error. I try something that's like, I'll sometimes like load a recording up with stuff and it's just garbage and pull a lot of it out. And, oh, okay. If I just leave the bass and the drums and this one guitar, that works better. Or I'll take the other thing where I got 12 guitars doing one thing, 12 guitars doing another thing, and 12 guitars, and then that is a thing in itself. And it's just got to work. And I think that's my main talent is I know when something works. Right. I really do.
So now do you do a lot of direction with the other musicians working with you? Or do you kind of let them have their way so they can get creative, and then you try to reel them back a little bit?
Well, I've gotten really good at letting talented people do their thing.
Right.
In the old days, I would go, no, it doesn't go that way. It goes like this. We should do this and this and this. And then I just end up making everybody mad, and it stilts the whole thing. But I've found just let people do what they do. If they're talented, they're going to do something cool. It's like, that wasn't what I was thinking, but you know what? It's pretty cool. I can change my idea a little bit. So if you take everybody's good ideas and then add your good ideas to it, that's really going to work. So that's what I tend to do. Go with the flow. Because, I'm sure there's certain things that I had a really definitive idea, like with some drummers like Jeff Henry I've worked with for years. Right. And he's great at not taking things personal and say, well, I was really thinking halftime on that, Jeff. Well, okay, I'll try that. Say, well, could you play a little busier or a little less? So that type of thing. But I try to find their little spark to add to it.
But we also think about this. It's not so much serving you. It's what serves the song.
Right.
Because the song really starts taking life of its own. I was just thinking about, when you were talking about Jeff Henry, I was thinking about Black Dog from Led Zeppelin.
Right.
And I coined the phrase earlusion at your studio that night. Remember that time?
I think so.
I coined that phrase there. And that song is an earlusion. So when you're listening to Black Dog, he goes, hey, Mama said the way. And then all of a sudden, when the drums come in, you get this sense of like, man, they're just really jamming it now.
Right.
But they're not.
Right.
They are not. They're not jamming. It's not going real fast like you think it's going.
Sure.
And I don't remember many songs that are doing that to me, So to have that match, boy, is that a trick.
Yeah.
Because Bonzo's just going dun, dun, boom. But Jimmy Page got all the riffs. He's going da 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 da. So he's the one doing all the work on that.
Sure.
About time the guitarist did some work, right? Instead of those damn drums. Cowboys of Alpha Centauri. This is really this is an epic song, man. I'm gonna say this for the worth of the sake of just being an obsessed fan, I guess you could say it. I'm really pissed off that the whole world hasn't heard this song. There's just so many there's so many levels to this that you can escape to. Being a guitarist and musician and all that stuff, that's just whatever it is. I remember as a kid, man, just enveloping myself into the song and just going, wow, this song does this song does that. And I love listening to some of these songs that we grew up in our generation. I know we have different tastes in some bands. But I remember listening to like Paul McCartney Ram album and just going, man, there's so much stuff he's doing. And I didn't even know he was playing all the instruments till later on.
Right, sure.
But when I listen to your piece, like here, this ends up being another great example of there are so many things that are going on with this. And I just adore songs like that. That's my passion for Zeppelin and the Beatles and stuff, because there's so much contrast. And you have nothing but contrast on this CD as far as I'm concerned. I was super, super impressed with this CD. All of the songs on here. Even the goofiness of Get Out of My Yard in here. You know, there's just some great stuff. And boy, that thing is probably one of your quickest BPM songs, I think, on the planet.
Yeah.
Do you remember? It was
Get out of my yard.
Yeah, that
it's kind of a country thing.
Yeah,
it's actually a little country tune. Yeah.
It's like, you know, if Todd Grubbs had to do the Led Zeppelin version of Hot Dog, that would have been yours, without being such an epic failure like Led Zeppelin's was. But let's go into how about a song that you want to pull up from another one of your CDs? Anything that you could think of that you would like to hear?
God, it's just, I wish I had the CDs in front of me. What album do you want to look at?
I don't know. Let's. So we have the Best of the Guests. We got Time, Space, and the Electric.
Time, Space, and the Electric. What's the first track off of that?
So we have that's the self-titled one right there.
Oh, well, that's an intro. That's really an intro.
Then Thank You, Mr. Maniac.
That one's kind of fun.
The Fearless Future, Dreaming Aboard an Alien Aircraft.
That one's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Is it? Edith, The Electric Life, A View from Inner Space.
The Electric Life too. Yeah.
We found the spot that we were looking for, and this was in the Electric Life.
Right.
And imagine that. How fitting to have Thomas Edison in there.
Yeah, I love doing that, adding little field recordings or old recordings, or like when I put Kate Bush's little interview in the restaurant on there. It's just, again, another interesting dynamic or interesting little fabric or twist that just kind of, especially with instrumental music, you know, it can get pretty boring. Even if it's brilliant, just straight, you know, it can get boring. So if you're not breaking it up or throwing in other elements, I think it's a good thing to do.
I want to talk about now just a little bit. I want to bring everybody. We got to bring everybody up to speed with Siren.
Right.
There's just some really great stuff that's going on with this band.
Sure.
The whole but what an experience, and just the you know, the rockumentary. Tell everybody a little bit about this. This is very cool.
Right. Well, basically, Siren was a band from the 80s that had some success in Europe and Germany, and then they just kind of fell apart. They couldn't sustain it, and everybody just went about their business. But then there was this big festival called the Keep It True Festival in Germany, and they try to go find these old bands to get them to come back together. So they talked Siren, Ed Aborn, and Doug Lee from Siren, the two main guys, into putting it back together. And they got almost all original members, except I was the only guy they brought in that wasn't originally a member, although I could have been. I was hanging out with these guys in different bands. And we recorded, first of all, we rehearsed and then went over and did that festival. And Chris Jericho, who's in Fozzy, also is a wrestler and just an entrepreneur in a lot of different ways, decided to send a film crew with us over there and do a documentary. And it came out really well, and it's getting a lot of good response. Then after that, we recorded an album, and I wrote a big chunk of that, and that's been fun. It's basically me kind of going back to my 20-year-old self, doing this metal stuff again, and it's been a blast. And one of the best things about it is that somebody cares. It doesn't really matter how brilliant you are or how great your songs, your ideas. If nobody cares, it just doesn't mean anything. So that's been a thrill. And even another thing that came out of this was FHM Records, who put out some of the Siren stuff, wanted one of my old bands, Atomic Opera, from when I was like 20, to record an album. And we did this demo, like a 2-song demo years ago, 35 years ago, 34 years ago, and we finally got our deal.
Oh, that is nuts.
So we recorded an Atomic Opera album, and that's done, and that should be coming out very soon, and that's been a blast. So it's just been a lot of fun. Again, we're not getting rich. There's not a lot of money in it, but it's been a blast.
What are the plans with Siren right now? Are they just keep on? Well, are they still doing stuff?
The documentary is going to come out in Europe. It still hasn't come out in Europe, and that's where Siren is actually pretty known to some extent. And we're hoping that comes out. I don't know exactly when, but when that does, that'll probably allow us to go over and play some festivals. Now, we were supposed to go back and play a number of other festivals after, but this thing called COVID hit. Have you heard of that? You heard about that?
Is this another band?
No.
Okay.
But anyway, so that got wiped out.
Right.
For 2019, 2020.
Right.
Here we are. Hopefully, if that movie comes out in the next year and things open up,
so that's available.
We can go over there and
I know that's available on iTunes, but did it wind up on Netflix too, or not?
It's not on Netflix, but it's on Hulu. It's on Tubi. It's on a lot of them, so you can find it if you want.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
I watched it. I was just
cool.
I was really impressed, man. It was,
a lot of your guitars are in it. A couple of them, anyways, right?
Well, yeah, I saw. It's like the whole thing closes with my name on your shirt, this huge thing running.
Isn't that great?
And it was like one of the closing scenes. I'm going, wait a second, that's my name. Wait a second, that's the guitar I built.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
That's cool stuff. And
that was fun.
It's awesome. So, and then what are your plans? What are you doing for? Are you working on a new CD right now?
Yeah, actually I am. I'm working on a couple different projects. We're probably going to do a few more Atomic Opera songs, and I'm working on another project with Ed Aborn. And then FHM wants me to do a solo album. So I'm going to do a solo album, probably with a bunch of different singers. There's some cool German singers over in Europe that different singers that I might work with, and I might do some of the singing myself. So
wow.
So it's been fun. And again, it's just kind of a cool little project. Really? You want me to record an album? You'll put it out? All right, great. I'll do it.
Very nice. And then you're also the owner of Todd Grubbs School of Music over in Valrico, Florida.
Yeah, that's
correct?
my basic day job, teaching the kids and adults. I have lots of adults, and we do a rock school band, and it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
That's very cool. Yeah. So if anybody's over in that neck of the woods, man, there's that whole Brandon area, man.
654 Todd, give me a call.
654. So thanks so much for being in the studio with Virgil, Todd.
It's been great, man. Good to see you, buddy.